It is time for Mock Draft 1.0 here on Take Command. Logan, does it feel good to be back in the war room? If you're watching on YouTube, you got the draft in front of you.
It does, man. It's exciting, and again, the draft is so funny. I had a coach tell me one time, and I didn't even think about this, but it's so much prep. It's 400 guys of prep for 5 picks, and so this is always just a reminder, all that work for just such a small thing. So
yeah, and you run a bunch of mock drafts if you're teams to try to do a bunch of different scenarios. And I will tell the listening audience, I did a test run to make sure I remembered how to use this little mock draft simulator. And lo and behold, when I hit start draft, I was very confused because Caleb Williams was on the board. Here's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna let the computer pick for every other team, not Washington. So Logan and I, we do mock drafts later on in the process. We'll pick for everybody.
Yeah.
But for today, for mock draft 1.0, we are going to go through pick 40. So we'll get the Commanders' first 3 picks. We will let the computer pick for everybody but Washington. Also, we are going to pick as ourselves. We're not trying to anticipate what Adam Peters and company will do. We're going to do what we would do at these spots. Right. I mean, they don't know what they're going to do yet. So, their guess would definitely be better than ours. But it is, we don't have any intel. We're not doing this based off information. We're doing this based off of our thoughts for positional needs and what we think of the players and all that kind of stuff. So when I hit play on the first one that I did as a test, the Bears took Drake May. And I was like, sure, I'll take Caleb Williams at 2.
Right,
Select. Right. I doubt that's going to happen again. I guess we're about to find out. Any other disclaimers or things that we want people to know before we dive in?
And we'll go through a couple of picks as we go through the list that are surprising to us, of the sim, just to give some context. But it's computers picking. So. Yeah,
so we'll definitely give some feedback. We are using PFF's mock draft simulator, which is obviously going to lean into their rankings. If we used another mock draft simulator, this might come out differently. That's all the background. 3, 2, 1, Logan. Time to start the draft. All right, the team before us, the Chicago Bears, has taken Caleb Williams, which leaves the top player. I know, stunning. Especially after they didn't on the last one. So that leaves top players on PFF's board, from a position or a positionless standpoint. Marvin Harrison, Drake May, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Brock Bowers, Roma Dunze, Cooper DeJean, the cornerback out of Iowa. On down the list, obviously Jaden Daniels is going to be someone that we're going to consider. Yeah. Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, the top 2 edge guys. But Logan, I think that we are both in the camp right now that quarterback is the way to go. But let's play the game for a second. If you weren't going to go quarterback, what would you do?
So if I wasn't going to go quarterback, I would try to trade back. Obviously, that'd be the first thing I would do, right? If I could trade back out of this spot, I think that'd be excellent. Again, because, if you don't love one of the quarterbacks and someone else does, they're going to pay a lot to move up for that spot. And I look at all these dynamic playmakers. You got your Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, your Malik Neighbors, your Joe Alts, those guys, Joe Alt and Marvin Harrison are really easy projections to NFL starters. So let's say you got one of those guys at 5, for example, right? And you got another pick in the first round, and you're able to draft another dynamic playmaker, name your guy. Because I do think there is a lot of talent in the top 120 picks of this draft that you should feel good about. So if you could add picks there and add a pick next year, I think that's 100% the way to do it. But, I think it's going to be really hard, honestly, to pass up on a quarterback at 2, especially because I think you're going to fall in love with one. I think teams around the league are going to fall in love with one of these guys because I've already fallen in love with one of them. And I don't know how you feel, Craig, but I think we should probably take a quarterback. Or do you want to trade back?
I think so, too. So my dream scenario, I was telling you about this the other night, and you were very excited about this. My dream scenario is that the quarterback that we don't fall in love with or that Washington doesn't fall in love with is the one New England falls in love with, and that someone else is also in love with that guy. So essentially what you can do is trade back one spot because you can call New England and say, hey, you like Drake May, right? And they're like, yes. And it's like, okay, we want Daniels, but we are comfortable trading back to 5 or whatever else because we think we can get someone else that we really love. And let's say it's 5 because that's the Giants, right? Or the Giants are at 6. So hey, we don't love our guy that much that we wouldn't trade out and go back to 6. So if you want Drake May, you got to make a trade with us at 3. We'd rather go back to 3 than 6. But if you don't make the trade with us, we're going to trade back to 6 and the Giants are going to take your guy. Now you get to fleece New England out of something, move back one spot, still get your guy, and get an extra asset. That's the dream scenario. But you also can't overthink it. You don't want to lose your guy, and you could get played by New England, and they could wind up stealing your guy from you. So I think that if you like one of these quarterbacks, you just don't mess around. You make the pick, and I think that's what I would do. I would also point out, just from an informational standpoint, if you want to get an extra first in this draft, Arizona is the team you want to trade with because they are sitting at 4. They have Houston's pick 27, and actually wonder, like, would this trade get accepted? 4 and 27. Yeah, it says would likely be accepted. So 4 and 27 for 2. That's very intriguing, especially if you're going to wind up at 4 getting Marvin Harrison Jr. or Joe Alt, or maybe can you convince Arizona that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get drafted by someone else? Like, that to me is the ultimate scenario. But I do think I would probably just draft a player, and I think that player is the same guy you want to draft.
Which is who? Who's your guy?
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels is my guy too. And again, we're still early, and quarterbacks are hard to evaluate. And again, the difference between them is very small, but they're just in that 2023 season, he was awesome. And again, he turns down open receivers to run the football. He's not a perfect prospect, but there's something about it, man. The ability to make plays when you need to make plays. There was something, that reminds me of the playmakers at the position in the NFL. And I just thought, that's the guy. And it was a down year for Drake May. I acknowledge that. 2022, he looks awesome. But, the recency bias is high for this, so I would probably go Jaden Daniels.
I would too. I look at the way, you can't punish him for having open receivers, especially when all he does is put the ball in stride to the open receivers down the field. Like, that accuracy still is accuracy. Even if he doesn't have to make as many contested throws, he's going to have to make at the next level. He also doesn't throw the ball over the middle of the field as much. That was kind of the offense, but you do see him hit throughout some of the season, like some backside digs, and like those throws are there on his tape. They're just not as frequent because of the way the offense is called. The thing that you obviously need to figure out is, like, mentally, how is he going to operate in this offense? Right. It is a space read type of offense. It is not a pure progression type of offense, or a coverage reading kind of offense. So, like, how does his ability to read your offense match up with his skill set? That's the question. But from a physical tool standpoint, great arm strength, great accuracy, unbelievable explosiveness as a runner. Does need to learn how to not look like a cartoon character when he gets hit. Yes. But other than that, like, there's just a ton to like.
Yeah, a ton to like. And, the middle of the field thing, I think, is 100% valid, because I think that's one thing Drake May does really well. But I do think he's accurate, and he's not afraid to be aggressive with the football. And again, he's thrown to some really good receivers, but I like the aggressiveness that he showed, right? He's not all the time, but I like the tight window ability. I think there's some value there that seems to translate better to the NFL level. And again, the draft's a crapshoot, but if I had to pick today, which is today's February, whatever.
It's February 14th. Don't tell your wife that you don't know what today is.
Valentine's Day. And if I had to pick today, I'm picking Jaden Daniels, but I do reserve the right to change my perspective on this as we get closer to the draft.
For sure. And the last thing I would say about Jaden and the air raid, and specifically Cliff, think about what he did in Arizona. It's like, let's get Hollywood Brown. Let's get DeAndre Hopkins. Like, I want to push the ball outside to my receivers. That is how he ran that offense. It wasn't an offense that ran a ton over the middle of the field. So when people draw the RPO connection and the personal connection to Caleb, the air raid connection to Drake, I'm like, I don't know. You want a guy who pushes it down the field on the outside the hashes? Jaden Daniels, bam, that's your guy.
I will say, when I was watching the film last night, pulling clips for the show, one of the things that came out to me was like, or I don't know if this was a Cliff thing or if this was a Kyler thing. Anytime on the backside of 3x1, they're running goes. They're not running backside digs. They're running goes or comebacks. And they got so many explosive plays because, like, on the backside of 3x1, even if it's cover 3, they're going to play match or man coverage to that single receiver side. So if you've got a guy over there like Terry McLaurin, like Jahan, a guy that you think can win those consistently, they had AJ Green and Hopkins, obviously, just ripping by people. And they found a ton of explosive plays. And when you watch LSU, there's a lot of similarities there in terms of that deep ball accuracy, that touch to layer it in over the defender and give your guy a shot in the right position. So I think that's a great point. In addition to the quarterback running stuff, in addition to the RPO stuff, in addition to some of the play action pass stuff, that deep shot aggressiveness is something that I think you see in the air raid all the time, and you see it in Cliff's offenses, especially the last time he was calling plays at the NFL level.
So the card has been sent in. Jaden Daniels, that is our pick in mock draft 1.0. All right, we'll now watch Drake May goes 3, Marvin Harrison 4th. If you want to pause at any point, Roma Dunse. I set this on slow so we could kind of go through it. Malik Neighbors. I'll stop it for sure at 10, but if anybody sooner. Cooper DeJean, the corner out of Iowa, 7. Nate Wiggins, corner out of Clemson, 8 to Atlanta. Olu Fashanu, 9 to Chicago. And then the Jets take Joe Alt. So that is where we are through 10 picks, Logan. Anything super of note there?
Yeah, I don't think Cooper DeJean goes that high. I think Cooper DeJean's an excellent football player. I think he's so fun to watch. He returns punts. He's got great ball skills. He's got great instincts for coverage. I think the combine's going to be big for him. His film's awesome. His film's amazing. But is he a safety? Is he a nickel? Is he kind of that hybrid Buffalo nickel linebacker? Because in college, he plays all of them, and he's good at all of them. He plays outside corner. But what is his role? And again, that lack of elite athleticism makes me a little bit nervous. And I think athleticism is a wrong thing to say, because he is a tremendous athlete. His coordination's off the charts. But does he run a 4.5 or does he run a 4.3? And I think that'll really affect his draft stock. So I don't know if he'll go that high. Also, Joe Alt going after Olu Fashanu, little surprising. I feel like Joe Alt's a lock. But I think the other picks in that range are pretty spot on. They feel like guys that'll go there. Obviously, no. Did Brock Bowers go in the top 10? I forget.
No, we don't have Bowers yet. So that's one guy. But that's the thing is you get a positional run on receivers, Harrison, Adunze, Neighbors, then corners, DeJean, Wiggins, and all of a sudden you're looking at a Brock Bowers outside the top 10. One of these guys is going to fall. You can't have 12 top 10 players. That's how it works.
And I think the other thing about the storyline there is only 2 defensive players in the top 10. I think that's how it's probably going to go. I think the receivers in this class are awesome. So I think you're going to see a lot of them go early, a lot of them and often. So I think that feels very realistic, because honestly, that's probably the best position group in the draft class this year.
Yeah, for sure. And there's going to be more to come. All right, let's continue on hit play, resume draft. Vikings on the clock at 11. They'll take Brock Bowers.
There he goes.
12, Bo Nix, QB4 off the board. Dallas Turner to the Raiders. By the way, Nix to the Broncos. Talisi Fuaga to the Saints. Jerzon Newton to the Colts. Terrion Arnold to the Seahawks. Latu, your guy, UCLA to Jacksonville. J.C. Latham, the tackle out of Alabama to Cincinnati. And then Jared Verse, edge out of Florida State to the Rams. And then Kenyon Mitchell, the corner out of Toledo to the Steelers. So in those 10 picks, Logan, what stands out to you?
Yeah, I think obviously Bo Nix going 12. I understand that that's kind of the hot thing right now. Is it AJ McCarthy going there? Is it Bo Nix? It'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out. Obviously, they're looking for a quarterback. They're looking for a young guy. And people are pretty polarized on Bo Nix. I was pleasantly surprised by his film. People are pretty polarized on AJ McCarthy. His film, obviously the athlete, the physical ability is there. The consistency is hard to find, because he's only thrown the ball 150 times in college football, so not a lot of throws to kind of get your evaluation, but the athlete, the tools are there. But again, anytime you've got kind of these really polarizing opinions on a guy, 12 just seems way too high. And I think you were telling me in your first mock draft that you did, AJ McCarthy's there in the second round, right?
Yeah, and JJ McCarthy going 50.
JJ,
I think, and when I did that, the one where Caleb Williams fell to second. So crazy.
Yeah. So that's kind of the story. Anytime a quarterback goes, that's surprising. Obviously, Talisi Fuaga is one of my favorite offensive linemen in the class. Not surprising. I think Dallas Turner is interesting. He's such an interesting prospect because he's immensely physically gifted. He just moves and bends kind of very Von Millerish, but not always has the best plan. And so it's totally a projection. So I would probably take Latu or Jared Verse above him. But again, that is not surprising to me that a team would fall in love with his ability. And obviously the corners, Quinyon Mitchell and Arnold, I think are really exceptional football players. Quinyon Mitchell was the standout at the Senior Bowl, and I think is going to be an excellent football player. So no surprise that, a guy that was maybe a second round player now going top 20, strong Senior Bowl with strong college tape at a smaller level. That's what that'll do for you. So
Off the top of your head, is there anyone on the board right now where you're like, I would give up capital to go back into the first round and get him, knowing that, kind of what's coming in these next 12 picks?
So you know me, Craig, and we've done a lot of shows together, done a lot of draft talk together. I'm not a big fan of giving up capital for a guy, even if I have a really high evaluation on him. So a guy that I really like is Darius Robinson. I love his film. I loved him at the Senior Bowl. Like I've talked about him glowingly at every facet, but I'm not going to overvalue my evaluation on him. And because I think there's other good football players and I want to make sure I can get two good football players instead of one good football player, right?
I agree.
That's ultimately my thought. So we'll see as we go through here, but there's really, it'd have to be a very specific situation, like obviously for quarterback. Let's say we traded out of that top spot, for example, and we took a receiver, an offensive lineman, and there was a Bo Nix or a Penix or a JJ McCarthy. Then I'd consider trading back in.
Yeah, that's the thing that I would say. If you have a quarterback that you love, and especially if you trade it out sooner and you pick up a little extra capital, that's buying you, you're playing chess. You're thinking one or two moves ahead here, where like you trade back accrue capital that you might use some of to trade back up later because that fifth-year option on a quarterback is so valuable. / do you make sure you get your guy at the end of the first round? All right. 100%. So with that, let's go 12 picks. Let's finish out this first round, and then we'll get into the second and the commander. So the Dolphins on the clock at 21. They take Marius Mims, tackle out of Georgia. Kool-Aid McKinstry, all-name team, cornerback, Alabama to the Eagles. Jackson Powers Johnson, center out of Oregon to the Texans. Troy Franklin, receiver out of Oregon to the Cowboys. Your guy Tyler Guyton, tackle out of Oklahoma to the Packers. Brian Thomas Jr., receiver, LSU to the Bucks. Braylon Trice, edge, Washington to Arizona. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., who is the cornerback out of Missouri to Buffalo. Kamari Lassiter, corner out of Georgia, well-liked by a lot of folks. He is going to the Lions. Ladd McConkey, wide receiver out of Georgia, to the Ravens. So a couple of Georgia guys. But Jordan Morgan and then Byron Murphy, the defensive lineman out of Texas, they go the last two. So, Logan, real quick, let's pick a guy or two that you want to talk about, and I'm going to reload this draft, and we'll get to the second round.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the tackles going there, I think this is what it's going to look like, and they're going to be the guys that indicate the draft. And Tyler Guyton, with the Pro Bowl, with the Senior Bowl that he had, is going to go probably first round, right? The thing I love about that draft is that there's some good football players still on the board, like Ladd McConkey going to Baltimore. I think he's an excellent receiver, slot receiver, going to be an excellent pro. But that means that an edge, a tackle, gets pushed to the Commanders. So when you see picks like that, Morgan going to San Francisco, I think is a really interesting pick because he's probably a guard, right? Would he add value to Washington potentially? But I think he's a better fit for that scheme there in San Fran. So again, that pushes players that again I think are better fits here in Washington to us, and I think that's pretty exciting. So obviously, lots of things there in that last 12 that shape the first two picks of the second round for the Washington Commanders.